Looking around all over this magnificent planet, the truth is clear. If you want freedom, be proud of your country. If you want democracy, hold your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and country first. The future does not belong to the globalists. The future belongs to the patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbours, and honour the differences that make each country special and unique. The story of our times is the rising power of the globalists, who wish to absorb nations and reduce citizens to cogs within an all-embracing global technocratic machine. The globalists decided, for whatever reason, that 2020 was the year they would come out into the open and make their great push for total world control. In pursuit of their goals, they have formed over many years global organizations that have no democratic legitimacy. Global organizations cannot, by their nature, be democratic. The World Economic Forum, the Bank of International Settlements, the UN World Health Organization, the Trilateral Commission, and others are run by individuals that have no mandate from any people and are led by the super-rich elite who are totally remote from the well-being of the people. The World Economic Forum and the United Nations have the most terrifying agendas for population reduction, destroying vibrant economies, and reducing us all to slavery. There is only one route to foiling the plans of the globalists. This is the reasserting of the true sovereign nation state, totally free from any organizations that serve the globalist agenda. We don't try to influence them, we cut all ties. Once you even start discussions with the globalists, you are dealing with those who see themselves as an elite far above the rest of us and have no interest in us except to exploit us for the grand purposes. The parasites that govern our nations tell us we need these organizations to survive in a globalized world. This is nonsense, designed to trap us and our nation within the embrace of the globalist plan. All international organizations that wield power are, by their nation, non-democratic and so can be seized and controlled by money power. We must cut them off completely. International bodies that have no legalistic commitment from members and do not wield power can have value and we remain within them. Examples are the Civil Aviation Authority and the European Court of Human Rights. These are regulatory or advisory bodies that do not serve the globalists but the interests of nations. Aside from these, we will do only bilateral agreements, and in that way there is no third-party bureaucracy to make rules and that can be captured by the globalists. Only the nation can be democratic. Only the nation can have a constitution. Only the nation can embody human rights. Only the nation can enshrine ethical values. Only the nation can provide real identity. Only the nation inspires patriotism. Only the nation produces culture and art. Only the nation attaches itself to a sacred land. Only the nation has soul. Only the nation can be loved. No one loves the European Union, the World Economic Forum, or the United Nations. Those who adopt them do so for personal gain and power. They are all, each one of them, a traitor to their nation. I am Peter Kello, creator of the Anti-Globalist Party. There is on the internet already much excellent reporting of current politics from alternative sites. In the UK column is outstanding. And there is a wide understanding by awakened people of the menace that globalist organization, led by their multi-billionaire supporters, pose. Street protests are valuable for venting anger and showing our leaders what they face. But we need more. No one that I know is providing any deep analysis or creating solutions to combating those who would reduce us to slaves under their dystopian visions. This is the function of the Anti-Globalist Party. I have researched extensively over the last 15 years the arts of political philosophy, economics, geopolitics, and current politics, and have designed the constitution necessary to create a truly sovereign, viable, independent nation that the globalists cannot touch. This I will describe in detail in videos, podcasts, and texts. Basic to this plan is that the nation must not have as members of its government those who have links with the globalist organizations as today. They are parasites on the nation. Parasites are alien to the body of the nation and always seek refuge in international bodies which have no loyalty to any nation. We must eliminate parasitism, and we do so by making parasitic activities illegal. All international globalist bodies are nests of parasites. The modern nation was founded on freedom, and ultimately it is the only guarantor of freedom. Only the nation has an interest in individuals by virtue of their belonging to it. Remember, whatever its present faults, without your nation, you are 1 inch high. Without your nation, no one will come to help you. If your nation fails you, as today's corrupt nations often do, you have no other recourse. No one else is interested in you, certainly not the World Economic Forum, certainly not the United Nations. However badly your nation has performed, it is still your nation that has given you the education you have, the healthcare you have, the legal system that has enabled you to work and own property and have a family and guaranteed your security. However dreadfully the UK may have performed these duties, the answer can never be with abandoning the nation. Our patriotism will see to that, for ultimately we love our nation with all its faults. That is why we will work to make it not just better, but a shining example of justice and prosperity. And nations do not create wars, as is often alleged. It is the parasitic elements with international connections that create wars. Wars serve their goals of undermining the nation and subjecting the people to death and misery, so strengthening their control over us. Many people, recognizing our dire predicament, invoke God to intervene and help us. As a Christian, I share this faith, but I believe that God works not as an external force directing events, but through the hearts and minds of people. We must develop and nurture the faith in God and the strength that comes through that faith in our community of souls. Globalists are enemies of God. They embrace the inverse of Christianity, Satanism. The globalists reject the Christian message and are afraid of God. They wish to replace adoration of God with adoration of material things. In this, they put money and the power it confers above everything else. Instead of working towards God, they want us to sacrifice to the planet, and to this end, they have devised the fairy story of a planet under threat by our human activity, and indeed our very presence. Make no mistake, climate change and viral attack are nothing but globalist myths designed to scare us into submission. The most fundamental institution of a healthy society is the family. Other institutions are also vital, and the nurturing of fine institutions is part of our program. We still have the remnants of good institutions, but these are under constant attack by the parasites that represent globalist interests. The still dominant neoliberal ideology introduced by Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s wages a constant war against civil and democratic institutions. The globalist parasites that rule us constantly extend corporatization into our revered institutions. The reason for this is that genuine institutions, properly constituted, of independent mind, whereas corporations can be welded into a pyramidal structure ruled from the top. This is corporate fascism. Corporate fascism was realized by Mussolini, but he saw it as controlling only his own country, Italy. But the principle of corporate pyramid building is now being applied globally, and the globalists seek to construct a global corporate fascist state. We must reverse this malign drift, as the new revitalized nation will depend on having robust ethical institutions. Such institutions are the basic building blocks of a healthy, free society. The traitors that lead our country have reduced our armed forces to a pitiful joke. Their policy is of integration with European and NATO forces, so that we are simply a supplier of military needs to these globalist entities. The sovereign nation must develop its own independent army, navy and air force that operate under the sole direction of the UK government. No sections will be truncated to serve strategic international interests. The military will only be used to defend the nation. Expeditions overseas to meddle in countries that have no need of us will be a thing of the past. Britain has a proud military tradition, and this will be revived. The destruction of the regiments, which create essential loyalties and camaraderie, will be reversed. We will retain a small tactical nuclear deterrent, similar to the old Polaris system. To do otherwise would put soldiers' lives unnecessarily at risk in a crisis. It is not always realised that the attack on the use of fossil fuels that is part of the bogus ongoing climate change movement is the continuation of a process of long standing to make the country dependent on foreigners for energy. This goes back to the abandonment of nuclear energy. Britain was in the 1950s a prime leader in nuclear energy, and the jettisoning of that lead was just part of the deliberate destruction of British industry and the prosperity of the people, a process that never ceases. Britain cannot supply its energy needs without nuclear, and so it is now reduced to buying in a nuclear plant from France at an exorbitant cost. The destruction of the coal industry was also motivated by ideology and the globalist parasites that run the country. We have a 400-year supply of coal still in the ground. No other country would simply shut that down. We need to preserve nature and not pollute the world, but the greatest source of pollution is globalization itself, which wastes energy and disrupts natural local production. To blame the burning of fossil fuels is nonsense, scientifically, and only serves the agenda of depressing economic life in all countries, but especially the developing ones. There is no global warming, and nuclear and coal are the essential components of a new, free, independent, sovereign Britain. An important part of creating the sovereign nation is economic reform. We need to adopt the so-called national economics of Frederick List and Henry Carey, forgotten names that made Germany and the US powerhouse economies in the 19th century. List emphasized productive powers of the nation. The planned destruction of industry that has occurred in the UK in the 20th century would be alien to List. We must totally reject the internationalist Adam Smith, whose theories led directly to the hollowing out of UK industry and the primacy of finance, which benefits only a few. His theories led to the export of capital from the UK for investment in the colonies and elsewhere, where labour was cheap. British industries, starved of capital, went into decline, and employment was savaged. The same process of exportation of capital continues today, destroying the industrial base. Germany, until recently, had retained the influence of List and is one of the economic powerhouses of the world as a result, putting all other European nations which have followed Adam Smith to shame. Also, in post-war times, South Korea, which has had little in the way of natural resources, adopted List economics. It became an economic powerhouse as a result. List and Carey were not opposed to international trade in principle, but showed how it could be conducted for the benefit of the whole nation, not just a financial elite with international connections. Cheap imports from China will no longer be used to fix the disastrous neoliberal economic model. Self-sufficiency in everything possible is a central goal. The balance of payments with every country should be close to zero. Money supply will no longer be designed to favour finance, but to favour the productive economy. Equitable international trade can benefit nations, but it should never be an end in itself, as globalisation demands. Where necessary, it will be regulated by bilateral agreements with no external bureaucracy. But in any case, the nation itself decides how it conducts international trade. And absolutely fundamental to the new sovereign economics will be the outlawing of all parasitic activity. This includes free export of capital, creating tradable derivatives, securitization, financialization, privatization, and numerous other anti-industry scams that the new sovereign economics will define and make illegal. Hedge funds will disappear as their activities are exclusively speculative and parasitic. Lastly, banking and the money supply systems need a total overhaul. Massive globalists, too big to fail banks will be a thing of the past, and industry will be served by hundreds of small private banks with dedicated charters to serve particular sectors. The money supply system will be reconstituted to avoid undue asset price inflation, for this undermines the working, productive economy and produces the kind of obscene inequality that we have as present. We will demonstrate technically, in detail, how this is to be done. True sovereign nations are not nationalists. Nationalism is about advocating the superiority of one nation over others, and with this goes the assumed right to dominate them. We have no need of nationalism. Our goal is sovereignism, full independence within a grand community of sovereign nations. We need a new glorious revolution. Nothing else will do. The globalists have been intent on destroying civilization and all it stands for, especially from the start of the 20th century. World War I was engineered behind the scenes by the globalists in a group calling themselves the Round Table, and it was a major push to destroy civilizations corresponding roughly to the old Christendom plus the Americas. It was not a conflict between nations, but a push by the globalists to destroy nations and civilizations, leaving them in a dominant position. It was very successful, and we have never recovered from World War I. The globalists continue these aims and have made another great push, creating the current global crisis where national leaders have turned themselves into tyrants. The Anti-Globalist Party will forge a truly sovereign nation. A political program is not sufficient. And we cannot simply void all international legalistic treaties by decree without knowing how we govern ourselves in their absence. For this, we need a radical new constitution. Needless to say, it must be a Republican constitution. The Anti-Globalist Party will lay out in detail the bricks and blocks of this new constitution. We must know how we are going to shape and to find our way out of the horrors happening around us and avoiding the horrors planned for us. We stand at one of history's great turning points. We are present in a cosmic battle between good and evil. We did not choose this, but it has befallen us. Our duty is to future generations throughout the world. We must identify our enemies and defeat them. They may appear strong and dominant, but ultimately they are weak. They are weak because they are evil, and the only resources of evil are lies and corruption. Those who accept the globalists' 30 pieces of silver become their prisoners with no way out. Once people see through their lies and resist their bribes, and we remove the parasitic economics which sustains their wealth, they will disappear into the sand. Although founded as a UK political party, the principles apply to all nations. We encourage an internationalist membership and the creation of anti-globalist parties in every nation. The principles we outline apply to every nation, for they are based on natural law, which is common to all humans. Crucial to our concept of the nation is that nations are the building blocks of civilization. Nations form civilizations, not by some legalistic contract, but from a common sense of humanity. We fully embrace the interests of world humanity, and this is integral to our pro-nation principles. Humanity is made up of people, but people are nothing without their national identity. We must forge anew our nations, propelled by love of country, love of freedom, and love of humanity.